Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we are going to be talking about writing about movies. Now, there's something about the medium of a movie that has captured the imagination more or less ever since motion pictures first became a thing. This is partly because, unlike a literary medium, such as a novel or a poem or a short story, the film, the movie, the motion picture provides a more consistent experience where you have not just the visuals, but also, at least after the development of talking pictures, also sound. You have the spoken evocation, you have the soundtrack, you have elements like the composition, the camera work, the focus, even the type of lens it used in the lighting that shape the experience, and you can have a sensory experience, a multi-sensory experience that is repeatedly viewable by the same person or different people, and to have that same experience and also different reactions. Sometimes our response to a film changes over time. Sometimes it changes because of other films that we've viewed or because of different experiences that we've had in life. And all of these things make movies a great catalyst for discussion, whether you're in a professional program, whether you are analyzing a business setting, counseling, comparing events in a film perhaps to a relationship in your own life. And so we're going to be talking about those and some other things today. A quick background on the Writing Center. If you're not familiar with ACU's Online Writing Center, we work with students in just about every online program at ACU. You can come to webinars such as this. We have sample papers for many programs. We have templates to help you with the formatting, various guides, posts on our blog, as well as writing consultations. Now, if you have a quick question, you can always just go ahead and write us to send us an email and say, okay, I would like to know this. And sometimes there's a question about formatting something. And I bet if you're watching this with a assignment in the MFTO program in line, you might be sending us an email asking, hey, did I format this reference for the movie correctly? And that's totally fine. Quick questions, we're happy to answer via email. If it's something longer, we'll suggest that you sign up for an appointment. And speaking of appointments, you can get appointments in two different types. You can sign up for an asynchronous appointment, meaning an appointment where you are making a reservation. By the time your appointment rolls around, you send a copy of your paper and any special requests for feedback into us. We look at it and we send you feedback, generally within 24 hours. If it's, say, Easter weekend, might be a little bit more time. But regardless, we aim to get things back to you well before the deadline so you can integrate the feedback. So if you have a Sunday evening appointment, don't worry, we'll get your feedback to you by early Monday afternoon. Same thing if you have a Monday morning appointment, we'll get the feedback to you by early Monday afternoon so that you have time to look at it and respond to it before you submit your assignment. For end of the semester, if you are making a same-day appointment on the last Friday when the assignments are due, we will be looking for those assignments to get the feedback to you as soon as possible. Just keep in mind, if you are signing up, you want to make sure that you have the time to integrate that feedback. So I would generally recommend signing up for an appointment sooner in the day rather than later, just so you have that extra time. Now, the alternate to an asynchronous appointment is a real-time appointment. And you can do this via phone or Zoom or even by dropping into Writing Center office hours. And whether you use phone or Zoom is mostly a matter of preference. I have some students who drive or carpool home after work, and so they like to have phone calls so that they can discuss things, and because they don't really have great internet access while on the highway, phone is best. You can say, oh yes, so on page 2, that paragraph, and we can look at it on our separate computers. But perhaps you're at your home office or you're staying at work afterwards, and you have some questions about how to do this formatting function in Word, or you have a lot of back and forth where you want to discuss in real time, then having Zoom screen sharing might be exactly what you want. And so you can pick between those options when you're signing up for appointments. again, the basic process, you will reserve an appointment. In this case, you go to my.acu.edu and you select from the online resources dropdown, you select the online writing center, and then there'll be an instruction video and step-by-step instructions to walk you through the process of scheduling an appointment. By the time your appointment comes around, submit a copy of your paper through Canvas. Because it will submit to Turnitin, sometimes you'll hear submit to Turnitin, same thing in this case. Canvas will take you to Turnitin. And if you happen to be done early, you can always upload your paper early, and sometimes one of my students is looking late, so I'll go and see if someone submitted something early, and then I can pull that and get the feedback to you even faster. And then we'll look at it, send you your feedback, or if it's a real-time appointment, you'll get the feedback in real time. Something that might be helpful if you are new to the Writing Center, we do have an awful lot of webinars in many different programs, and so if you go to our Writing Webinars page and you scroll down, you will find that you have different programs you select. Now in this case, the assignment that we're discussing is drawn from the MFTO plan, Marriage and Family Therapy, so if you wanted to see all the webinars associated with those courses, just scroll down till you reach this tabbed guide and select MFTO, and that'll bring you to all of the webinars that are tied in with that. And those are sorted by course number and then by week. So for example, a week 2 assignment would be listed before the week 3 assignment, and so on and so forth. And we are constantly adding new webinars. So you might go look through and see, oh, hey, I'm taking this course through these webinar tie-ins. I'm going to mark my calendar to watch those particular webinars right at the start of the new week. And so we have many students who will read the assignment description, then they'll watch the related webinar, and then they'll start working on their outline before they do the course reading, because it helps them know what kinds of details to pay attention to, what they're looking for, what they need in sources, and so on and so forth. So our main learning objectives today, we are going to first look at a sample assignment from the Marriage and Family Therapy program that happens to involve writing a movie analysis. And I say writing a movie analysis because a movie or film review is something different. And we'll talk about this a little bit more, but briefly, when you are reviewing a movie or film, you are passing judgment on it in some way. That could be, is this something that I liked? This could be something that I think you should see. This could be, do I think this is well done? Which could be entirely different from whether you personally like it. Now, a movie analysis, on the other hand, is looking at the movie and then taking it apart in a different way. It could be looking at, okay, so how is this constructed? It could be looking at what this means, or it could be, as is the case in many assignments at ACU, it could be using the movie as the catalyst or medium for discussion. And partly that's because, as we talked about in the beginning, a movie is a way of having a reproducible multisensory experience. And so for having something to understand what people are feeling, being able to see it, to hear it, sometimes to feel like you could sense it and smell it even because the filmmaking is that good. That is something very powerful, helping us look and understand phenomena that we, in some cases, would much rather not experience personally. So, with no further ado, let's delve into that assignment. So this is the Week 2 assignment on Gender Dynamics in Popular Media. And it's coming from the Cultural Diversity in Marriage and Family Therapy course. Now, this assignment gives you a choice of films here. This is 11 prepared films and the option to pick another one. These are ones that are all coming out of the larger stream, the larger output from Disney and Pixar. And look at this. These are a lot of things that people view in their childhood or perhaps with children that they have. And because of that, it creates a sort of common cultural experience for people who've seen it. So just as an example, my siblings and I grew up with the video recording at home of Alice in Wonderland and of Sleeping Beauty. So these were things that were watched time and time again. And so we not only know the sequence of events very well, but could sing many of the songs from memory and things like that. And so when we're talking about events or things that characters do, it has the benefit of other people not only being able to go and watch that movie themselves to see the exact moment, but often to be able to draw on their own experience or familiarity. Now, this is something where if you're analyzing a movie, it's helpful to have something that has a broader base of experience because of that recognition, and also because if something has become a, we'll say, cultural icon or a cornerstone, that there is a certain respect to it that allows these examples to have more force, especially if you do a strong analysis. Now, I see on this list that it actually has Brave twice, so make that 10 films, plus the option for one approved by the instructor. All right, so the instructions say to provide a brief overview of the gender dynamics of the film, not a summary of the plot. And that's an important thing because often people have written movie reviews or movie summaries, kind of like a book report that you may have done earlier in your schooling. And that's not what the assignment is asking for. Now, if you are writing a film review or a synopsis of a film, we actually have webinars on that you can access on the Writing Center website. But in this case, that's not what the assignment is asking to. So select a movie and give a brief overview specifically of the gender dynamics in the film. And specifically say, what gender messages did you observe? And in light of the weekly readings, how did you make sense of the messages? And so brief overview probably means around a paragraph. A page would be excessive and probably not brief, but a good paragraph. So you describe at least 2 microaggressions from the film with their potential impact. So you're going to identify at least 2, could be more. And then I would say for each of those, look at, okay, how are gender messages being transmitted and what are the potential implications? And that could be a big picture, like as a whole for the film, or that could be specifically with each microaggression, or for both to look at them separately. And then describe a clinical situation which clients might enter into treatment to address stressors related to gender, and describe 2 interventions you might apply when working with such clients. All right, so we have a list of things for this assignment, and we have a rubric that says basically, hey, you need to do all the things we said, and you also must be formatting this in the APA style. You should have references, a minimum of 4 scholarly sources, plus, of course, the movie, and then a length of 4 to 5 pages, and, of course, well-polished writing. Make sure to write a spelling and grammar check, make sure it flows, all the normal stuff. All right, so looking at that, let's talk about some things that you want to have in a movie analysis. And this is a type of movie analysis here. It is particularly about gender dynamics, about analyzing gender dynamics in this movie. But again, a movie analysis as distinct from a summary, a report, a review, which are other genres of writing about movies or films. By the way, if you're wondering about the difference between movie and film, in some cases they are used synonymously. The reality is that these days most movies are no longer shot on film but are shot digitally, but film is used colloquially as a synonym for movie, which is itself shorthand for motion picture. All right, so if we look at the assignment here, it says, okay, do these things. And what I sometimes hear from students coming back to me after they submit an assignment is, I didn't get full credit. I thought I did that. And so we'll talk about some common mistakes with movie analyses that might cause you to lose points. So one of these is to have too much summary. Note that the instructions here specifically say that you are to provide a brief overview of the gender dynamics of the film, not a summary of the plot. Does that mean you won't give a little bit of information about the plot? No, it probably will help to say a little bit here and there, but that's not what the focus is supposed to be. So when you're summarizing parts of the movie, the focus should be on those gender dynamics. Some of that might come up in the course of describing some key events, because that's where those gender dynamics may come out particularly, especially if they're stressful situations. But this question of where the focus is and where the most of the discussion is. So too much summary, and to avoid that, make sure you use just a little bit of summary to help orient the reader, and that it's about the right thing. So summarizing the gender dynamics, not the plot for this particular assignment. So it's probably going to be a maximum of about a paragraph near the start of a 4 to 5 page paper. If you're writing a 10-page paper, probably a bit more, but 4 to 5, probably about a paragraph, because then most of the details that you might also introduce will come up in those more focused discussions. Another reason, not being explicit about why something is being discussed. Because if you don't give your reader a clear reason for why you're discussing this, the information has a high chance of looking like you're just giving summary or trivia, rather than having an analysis or a clear purpose for what you're doing. So state why you're discussing things in the topic sentence of a paragraph. Here's an example of less helpful summary. Next, the stormtroopers invade the rebel ship and capture it. If you haven't figured out, this example is coming from the movie Star Wars. Now, this tells us an event that happened. So it's basically a summary of something that happened in the plot. What it doesn't say is why or how that's important, or for that matter, why we're discussing it. Now, a better example, if we're trying to discuss the power dynamics in that movie, would be to tell us why and use terminology to show us that that's what you're talking about. The Empire's overwhelming power is shown in the next scene when the stormtroopers invade the rebel ship, swiftly overpowering the opposition. So here we know we're talking about power because it's this grammatical subject of the sentence, the Empire's overwhelming power. And then the language after that tells us something about what's going on. Okay, the stormtroopers invade, swiftly overpower the rebels. Now, this next one, we're going to look at the wording of the better example first, and then we're going to look at why these particular details are important. So the following confrontation scene is very tense. So following tells us where it is in some chronology of things that we've said, and it's described specifically as a confrontation scene, and confrontations are where we often see power dynamics in action. The following confrontation scene is very tense. Why? Because both Starlight and the rest of the Seven do not know how the emotionally stunted Homelander will lash out. If you're not familiar with it, this is a reference to Season 1 of the TV series The Boys, which is about superheroes behaving badly and not being nice people. Okay, so look at these details. The following confrontation scene, so that tells us where it is in the context of other things mentioned. Very tense describes it generally. Then there's the explanation. Okay, these characters are mentioned. One is described as being emotionally stunted, which it gives us a way of understanding that we'll lash out. So even if you haven't seen this, you're like, okay, so this person probably doesn't have very good control, and this bothers them. And so those details help us understand the things that are being identified as being important, more so than if we left them out. If we just said, because both Starlight and the rest of the Seven don't know what Homelander will do, that could be, okay, do they have money riding on this? Are they confused? Or in this case, you get the sense that it's very uncomfortable, probably because, in this case, he is very powerful and unfortunately not a nice guy and prone to killing people, which is not something that will make people relaxed. So this is coming in response to people losing points for not being specific about what is being discussed. So we have a good idea. Okay, there's a confrontation. It's tense. We have these things. And we don't need to go in the details of what exactly happened there. This is enough to know, okay, yes, we have this identified. We even have 55 minutes to 11 seconds and to 59 minutes, 47 seconds. We even have a specific timestamp, so if you want to watch that exact scene we're discussing, you can go to that spot. So rather than be non-specific, give us the key details. Okay, it's a confrontation scene. Explain the importance. They don't know what he's going to do. It's worrisome because he's emotionally stunted. And include a citation with the timestamp. Now, if you're wondering, cryptic at all, that is referring to the directing team for this, which is one of those things that you include in a citation for a movie or a TV series. And as an example of the kind of language that sometimes ends up on my desk, someone asking, why did I lose points? Well, if you had a summary like, the following scene is very tense. Well, it doesn't tell us much about what's following, so even if you watched it, you might not remember exactly what happened afterwards. So having the additional detail, the following confrontation scene, and then the explanation of why or how it's tense, again, very helpful for understanding what to pay attention to. I mentioned this briefly before, writing a review instead of an analysis. So what is the purpose of your writing? Are you giving your opinion, or are you, as the case for this assignment, using the movie as a medium for discussion and to show or highlight other things like gender dynamics, microaggressions, and other things like that? And the last one, not clearly answering the assignment prompts. And this is unfortunately something that gets people sometimes when they are just starting to write in APA style, because there are many different styles of writing, many different philosophies of writing, and some styles of writing encourage a variety of phrasing, and APA style emphasizes specificity, conciseness, preciseness. So to make it clear that you are answering the assignment prompts, you want to use wording from those prompts. And I would also say, in your introductory paragraph, give us an outline of the paper, and then answer each prompt in the order that it was listed in the outline, ideally the same as in the assignment instructions. And when you answer that prompt, use the wording of the prompt. So to take an example from this particular assignment, describe at least 2 microaggressions. Well, you could write about it saying, oh, what an uncomfortable situation was when. But that wording, uncomfortable situation, while it can certainly apply to microaggressions, it doesn't make it super clear that you are in fact referring to a microaggression. Now, if you had wording like, for example, there are frequent examples of misogynistic microaggressions in the film. For example, in the cafe scene. Then that tells you A, okay, you're pointing out there's more than one. B, you're giving a specific type. Second, the alignment between the instruction, describe at least 2 microaggressions, saying, okay, there are misogynistic microaggressions in the film. That's giving a deliberate, very clear statement, hey, here's one of those things that you asked for. What is it? Well, the example in the cafe scene, blah, 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 blah. And of course you would want to include a citation as well with a timestamp to mark the specific moment you're referring to. So the next step would be outlining and drafting. And in this case, you want to be starting with the assignment instructions because they do lay out a very clear order to describe things. So you'll want to identify the movie that you're discussing and give a brief overview of the gender dynamics of the film. And without taking something on this list, let's say, well, let's stick with the Disney Pixar canon here. Let's go with, I'll say, The Little Mermaid, the animated film. And if we're going to be outlining this, okay, starting with a brief overview, well, you can give that in your introduction paragraph. And let's make sure we answer those questions. What gender messages did you observe? And using the weekly readings, how did you make sense of these messages? So, as the overview, I'd probably say, okay, The Little Mermaid, parentheses, whoever the director was, comma, 1988. The Little Mermaid is a film in which events happen. in this case with the gender dynamics, I'd say probably in which a mermaid gives up her identity to pursue romantically a human male. Now, that's really all I need to start about the plot. Now, since the focus is supposed to be on the gender dynamics, we can talk about, okay, well, what are the things that you are seeing? And those could be different from me. But I might see, okay, while Ariel is very independent, she is ultimately saved by her male love interest, and then you can interpret however you want. Some people might say, okay, this is they're working together. Other people might say, well, it's a damsel in distress. I don't know what you will decide, and this is something where often there's room for more than one interpretation, or different details stand out differently to other people. But tell us what gendered messages gender messages you are observing in the film. And then after you've done that as part of your overview of the gender dynamics, then I would come back in another paragraph and discuss what those meant in the context of the weekly readings. How did you make sense of them with them in line? Now, if we were to look at the module for this, we have a variety of different sources to cite. Of course, you want to add those into your reference list and to cite them as you're discussing them. The other sections, microaggressions, you're probably going to be referring to a definition of microaggressions as part of that section. And let's, at this point, talk about how you might cite that film. So we're going to move on to our outlining and drafting section here. And I do strongly recommend that you grab a copy of our APA course paper template because it does a lot of the APA required formatting for you. Now, for citing a film, whatever it is in APA style, you're going to want to be following the special APA guidelines for that. And I've included a link for the official APA style website. Now, note here that we have the director listed as the author, but with the parenthetical note director. That's for the reference entry. When you're citing them in the body of the paper, it'll just be using the director or director's last names in the normal author, comma, date, or author parentheses date format. Now, if we're to look at one of the films you can pick here, we have two directors, so you'd be referring to the authors as Andrews and Chapman, their last names. The film is Brave. It came out in 2012, so Andrew and Chapman, 2012. And it happens to have two production companies, and this is listed in the same order that they are in the credits. Walt Disney Pictures, because they did the distribution, they claim the first publisher credit, and Pixar Animation Studios claimed the second one. So if you're citing that in the body of a sentence, you might have the title of the film in Brave, and then parentheses Andrews and Chapman, 2012. Or you might be writing about events in the film and be referring to a specific scene, and so your citation would have Andrews and Chapman, comma, 2012, and then the timestamp. That's minutes, seconds. If you have hours as well, it would be, for example, 1:22:13 for 1 hour, 22 minutes, 13 seconds in. If you are wondering what to do to fill out your paper, how to dive into the analysis and to make your analysis more clear, and again, I would recommend starting with the instructions as your outline, answer those as directly as possible, and then expand on them. If you're looking for ways to clarify that you are doing analysis, so language to use, and types of analysis you can do, I do recommend our Beyond Summary webinar, which delves into this over the course of about an hour. We also have the related Synthesis and Consequences webinar, which talks about particular ways of adding synthesis to your discussion of a series of events. Now, this happens to be using a case study as an example, but film is used often in place of a case study because it provides a set of information that is, again, widely accessible. So there are a lot of related principles that you might find helpful there. I've also included some slides on our no tiers plan for paragraph writing. And again, coming back to the earlier suggestions about starting each paragraph with a clear topic sentence that lays out why you are discussing something or how you're discussing it, and then present evidence in support of that claim, analyze it, repeat as necessary, and then synthesize it. Tell us what these things mean when put together. So to take Brave as an example, will you see various events that you identify as microaggressions? Probably. I think if the instructor selected on the list, they probably believe, yes, you will. Now, what do you make of those? How would you apply them? Now, that's a movie that's set in a, I would say, medieval society. And you might say, well, that was just back then. Or you might say, well, actually, some of that's happening today. Or here are things that they did that are still present in today's society, and therefore X. So whatever it is, that's going to be part of your synthesis when you say, okay, here's what we should do in light of that. Now, going back to the instructions briefly, if we are looking at this note to go ahead and describe interventions you may apply when working with clients, that's one of the synthesis things. That is looking at, okay, how do we take the insights that we've gleaned from looking at this film and take it into the clinical scenario? And so having a commentary, is this applicable? Is this not applicable? Is this whatever it is? That is the way to make a strong connection and really show why analyzing the film is helpful for clinical practice. All right, I think that's all we have time for today, so we'll just end on a couple points. First, if you have any questions, feel free to send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. I realize that many students do not normally cite and reference movies, so if that is you and you want to have some input or perhaps some validation of your best guess, just send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu with the details, and we'll get back to you. If you would like feedback on our draft, please feel free to schedule an appointment. You can go to my.acu.edu and sign up by going to the resources drop-down link and selecting Online Writing Center and just follow the instructions from there. And feel free to visit us on our website or to catch another webinar. Have a good day.